Am I getting any oil in my intake with the crankcase venting solution, check valve, and OEM breather bolts? Let me show you what I found. How's it going, everybody? If you've been watching my videos on Milwaukee 8 crankcase pressure, crankcase venting, sumping, and external breather mods, you'll know that there's been an awful lot of conversation on these topics and a lot of work done to address these various issues. In my most recent video on this topic, where I left things was I have a crankcase vent installed in the transmission top cover along with a check valve. I have removed the external breather modification to the 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗧𝗦 Monster Sucker intake, and I'm using the OEM breather bolt configuration. And I'd done an initial check on that setup after a few weeks of riding. And at that initial check, things were looking great. There was very little oil deposited on the bolts, but I knew I wanted to get in some longer rides and spend some more time at highway speeds with the engine at higher RPMs and at full operating temperature, and do some additional checks on those bolts just to make sure that things were still looking good. I've also received comments about the check valve, asking how well it's doing and whether or not it's getting gunked up with oil. So I decided as part of this process, I'd inspect the check valve as well and give you a report on that and let you know how well the whole system is doing. By the way, if you're new here, thanks so much for stopping by to check out this video. My name is 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗧𝗕𝗡𝗧𝗦, and here on this channel, I tackle projects of all sizes related to the bikes I ride, and I give you as much information as I can about those projects and try to share my learnings along the way. So be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and enable all notifications so you'll be alerted whenever I post new videos. Since doing that initial inspection on the intake breather bolts after removing the external breather modification, I have spent a few more weeks riding the bike in the warm Florida summer, and I've spent more time up at highway speeds, at higher RPMs, at full operating temperature. And so I thought it was a good time to go ahead and do that additional check and let you know how things have been working out. Interesting side note, if you've seen any of my other videos, you may know that I have an 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗧𝗦 Monster Sucker intake. And on the last ride that I did before checking these intake breather bolts, I got caught in a pretty heavy rainstorm, and I did not have a rain sock with me for that intake, and I learned something pretty important. So there'll be another video on that topic. I pulled those intake breather bolts again and gave them a check. And again, I was pleasantly surprised. There was very little oil on those bolts, and I saw some dark spots at first that I thought were heavier oil deposits, but that was just discoloration on the intake bolt. And the throttle body was also clean with no visible signs of oil. And for comparison, here's what those bolts looked like before I did any crankcase breather modification whatsoever. And here's what they look like after just a couple of weeks of riding between the time when I did the initial check of those bolts and I did the first crankcase venting solution. As you can tell, the results are massively different. There's no comparison between the amount of oil and gunk on those intake breather bolts before any crankcase venting was done and after I installed a crankcase venting solution. Night and day difference. What that tells me is the crankcase vent is doing a great job of letting that pressure get vented out through that little pod filter and sending a minimal amount of oily residue and oily mist through those breather bolts and into the intake. Thumbs up, very happy with that so far. I then moved on to the crankcase breather check valve. So I pulled that right-hand side cover off, popped that check valve out and gave it an inspection. As expected, I found a milky, oily residue in that check valve. And I say that's expected because there is moisture and oily mist inside the crankcase swirling around as the bike runs. And all of that gunk that you saw on those breather bolts before I did anything has to go somewhere, and that's going out through this crankcase venting solution and going through that check valve. The check valve is still working just fine, and this particular check valve should be solvent resistant, so I blew it out with some carb cleaner, put everything back together, and it's ready for some more riding. Since I know that I'll have some amount of buildup in that check valve, I'll just be sure to periodically remove it and clean it just as I've done here in this video. All indications are good that I don't have a sumping problem on my bike, but in the next video, I'm gonna pull that crank sensor and see how much oil I get. And that's a really reliable indicator of whether or not you have a sumping problem. That crank sensor is down at the bottom of the sump, and after you've been out riding for a while and you pull that crank sensor, you can measure exactly how much oil is left in the sump at that point, and then that gives you a good read on whether or not you have a sumping issue. So be on the lookout for that video, it's next in the lineup. So my current solution for crankcase venting is working well. In the back of my mind, I'd really like to completely eliminate the possibility of any of that oily residue being blown into the intake. And that's why I want to try the other solution that viewer 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗧𝗕 mentioned. And that's the combination of all of these different things that I've tried so far. It's a crankcase vent with a check valve. It's an external breather modification, but both of those go to a catch can instead of pod filters. And then you apply manifold vacuum to that catch can as well. And that allows you to maintain vacuum in the crankcase when possible, while still venting everything out and not sending any oil or mist or any residue whatsoever through the intake. So I'm really interested in trying that out. It's in the video lineup as well, so be on the lookout for that video at some point in the near future. Have you vented your crankcase and are using the OEM breather bolts, or are you interested in venting your crankcase? And if you've done it, how well is it working out? Drop me a comment and let me know. Leave me as many details as possible. I really enjoy reading about your projects, and I'm sure the rest of the community benefits from that as well. And also let me know if there are any other video topics you want me to cover. Be sure to check out my previous videos on crankcase venting and sumping. I put together a playlist for you so you'd have them all in one place. You can get to those using this link or the link in the video description. And if you found this video informational or useful, please do hit the thumbs up button to share it with your friends. That helps the channel out a lot, and I really do appreciate your participation as well. And if you're new here, please do consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, and enabling all notifications so you'll be alerted whenever I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next time.